Go. What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Thank you for your time thus far. I really appreciate all your support. It really means so much to me. So today, I'm joined by a very special guest. I'm joined by a teaching fellow at GSA, Miss Sabina Netherclift. Netherclift. Oh, almost there.
You
So
so
close.
well done. The
Oh,
first bit was perfect.
at least I got one bit of it right. That's the important thing. But yeah, so today I'm joined by Sabina Netherclift, who goes by the name of Sabs because it makes her feel much more at home than
Yes.
Sabina. It's in fact she just said it's a name I don't recognize anymore. So
Yeah, Sabina. If I get called Sabina, it's I don't. It's a beautiful name, but I just don't think it's my name
it's
because
not just not your name. So for the
yeah,
rest of the
yeah.
episode, you'll be known as Sabs, as we all know
Perfect.
and love you by. So to introduce Sabs, Sabs actually trained with the person we're going to be talking about today, which is Jacque Lecoq, a movement director from Paris. Sabs had the actual honor of being in the room and working with the man himself. And since then has been a performer and movement director for over 20 years. She has performed with companies such as diverse as the Clod Ensemble, the RSC, the Young Vic, and has also directed work for Red Cape Theatre, Opera North, and the English National Opera, among many others. She is also the co-artistic director of the Filament Theatre. Filament Theatre fuses original multi-part vocal music with devised physical performance. She is a teaching fellow in contemporary theatre practice at the Guildford School of Acting, where she has been there for the last decade. Sabs has taught physical skills on undergraduate courses for Arts Educational Schools London, Mount View, Birmingham School of Acting, Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, Roast Buford College, and is currently an external examiner for East 15's BA Acting and Contemporary Theatre course. So,
Well, I have to update that bit because actually I've finished my little tenure of doing that.
oh really?
So yeah, somebody else has taken that over now, the external examination.
That GSA's biography is behind episodes.
Behind the times, I will update it.
That's amazing. So yeah, so it's movement's been a big part of your life, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I often just before we introduce the cock himself,
Hmm.
I get this image of yourself just at a busy tube station, and you're looking at all the different ways that people, the commuters, whether they're running for a train or it's just like little like gestures like fiddling with the phone, and you're just thinking that's really interesting. I don't know how are they doing that. Is that an accurate description, or am I just
Well,
there?
it's truer than you know, Ollie, because actually, one of our first shows as Filament, when we were sort of becoming Filament, was a show called Drive, Ride, Walk, and part of it was sent on the Northern Line, and some of it was set riding a bicycle, and then it was just about the commuters walking through London Bridge and all the kind of movement of people when they're. If you've ever been on London Bridge at like 9 o'clock or even 8:30 in the morning, and there used to be before obviously this period, this kind of great river of people,
Yeah.
some going really slowly, hardly any going slowly, but occasionally you get the one person who's going slowly and everybody else is in a kind of rush. So yes, I will observe things all the time. I'm taking information about movement. I guess writers are always listening to what people say, and I'm always watching what people do and how they move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, I think actors always do the same. I think we always encouraged to watch other people and how they talk and how they move and everything.
Yeah,
And more the picture voice, actually having been at GSA for a little bit before going back, you're very aware of
yeah.
the pitches of the voice as well, and how someone who more commonly is not telling the truth could be like suddenly their pitch just goes very high. It's like did you do your homework? Yeah.
Oh, that's so good to know.
Yeah. It's like
Is that mask you're wearing one that you've made? Yeah. Now I'll know. Okay, great.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then you think, yeah, I know what you're up to. Okay, so Lecoq himself,
Hmm.
or Jacque Lecoq, for anyone who doesn't know, is a movement kind of guru in the theatre world, in the acting world. Somebody um, who wants his actors, who puts the script down and wants his actors to create a story through movement. Now, this is a little bio for anyone who knows about him but wants to know a bit more about him. So let's have a listen. So Jacque Lecoq was born in Paris on the 12th of December 1921. He was a physiotherapist shortly after the Second World War, so he actually had first-hand experience of men actually trying to rehabilitate their bodies through movement to try from their horrific injuries in the war to try and get themselves walking again. He is regarded as probably the greatest and perhaps the most important mime artist and teacher of our time. He was passionately interested in commedia dell'arte theatre. He spent a lot of time in Italy to research mask work from original 16th century strolling players, from their archive, obviously not in person because they wouldn't be here.
Pick them up.
Yeah, exactly. What have you done? There he met Italian director, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, so just bear with me, Giorgio Strella, I've probably got that wrong, who was also passionate about commedia dell'arte, who had also created the Piccolo Theatre acting school. In 1956, Lecoq started his own school of mime in Paris, which became a nursery for many brilliant mime artists and creators, and is still going strong to this very day. So his main dramatic forms, with some of the things we're going to talk about today, are the neutral mask, tragedy, Greek chorus, commedia dell'arte, melodrama, scripts, and clowning. And so the main foundation of his work is that he wants his actors to express themselves solidly through movement. So that is Lecoq. There's a bit of background for him. And of course, I suppose a very special bit of information to bring up today is that Sabs actually worked with the man himself. And yeah, I mean, what was it like working with the man, with Jacque Lecoq?
Well, it's interesting because I only found out about his school. Like, I wasn't a kind of acolyte for years before and like had this kind of like, oh my God, I can't wait to get there, and spent years waiting to get there. I saw a show which blew my mind in about 1991, and it was by the company Complicité, or Theatre de Complicité as they were called then.
Yes.
And it was a production of The Visit, which has just recently been done again, I think, at the Almeida. And the show it had hardly any sets, but all the kind of atmosphere and the situations and the places the actors were created by them, and the way they reacted to things physically. And it was so immediate, and in the moment I just was completely like, what is this? Who are these people? How are they making this? So I went to look in all their biographies, and I saw that about half the company had trained with this guy called Jacque Lecoq. I'd never heard of him before, and I must have been about 2021 at this point. So I phoned up the offices, and I spoke to somebody in the office who said, well, listen, I'll send you some information about the school, and you can, because I'm not sure that there were websites then. They certainly didn't have one, I don't think. So I read up about them, and then it turned out the person that I had spoken to was going there that autumn, was actually just an intern kind of at Complicité, and was going to start at the school, so actually could tell me quite a lot more. And so I applied to go, and I spoke French a little bit anyway, so that's one of the things that you have to be able to do when you go to school is speak French, otherwise you're completely lost. And actually it was sort of more as I was in the school and learning from him that I sort of realized, oh yeah, this is absolutely the sort of thing that I should be doing, that I really enjoy doing. And he was kind of remarkable, I think, so different from any kind of teachers that I'd had before. He was very honest immediately about what you did on stage. So we used to, very much like, I guess, in our kind of work when we worked together, Ollie, the whole way that you find things out is by doing stuff. And it tends to be at the beginning of Lecoq's work that rather than necessarily going up all together, although there are classes in movement where you do work together with everybody else, it's about getting up in the space and trying things out. So very quickly you understand that you are probably not going to get very far unless you put yourself in the space and find things out. And the more that you do that, and the more you fail at doing that, the more you'll kind of discover about yourself and the way that you kind of explore work. And I probably was not at all brave to start off with, but got braver through the school at getting up into the space. But one of the reasons you probably end up not being that brave is because he would just call you out immediately. Oh, that's so boring. Oh my God, it's like my sister could do better than that. No, sit down. So you would not be able to, get very far if you weren't immediately kind of grasping the interest. And we used to do these things every week. He would set a kind of theme of something. So you'd get into a group of 6 or 7 and you'd be creating a piece of work along a theme that he set to you every week. And at the end of the week on a Friday, you'd present this to the whole school. And quite often my group would get up and we'd be up for like 30 seconds and go, no, 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 no. And you just would be off, Well, no, this is not theatre. This is not even, this is not interesting. This is, so it would be along those lines. So he's sort of, in some ways that made you want to, that kind of, I guess, added to his kind of cultish status, which some people give to him, because you would desperately want to try and get him to say something lovely about your work.
Something positive.
Something positive about your work, yeah. Or even just to get a, yes, we, yeah. That would be enough. You'd be like, yeah, I did it. But it kind of, you really were forced to investigate, what is it that is the thing that captures, what is the truth of this, what is the essence of this? Because often when you would be told to stop, it was because you were just skating along the surface, you hadn't really reached the essential of something, you weren't really losing yourself in the movement, whatever it was. There would be some very clear reason why you were just like, you weren't engaging properly with the work, and that would be the reason for you to be gone. But I mean, he was still, he wore a white tracksuit. He'd still come in. He'd go through the kind of movements that we would do. He'd take us for improvisation classes, and he'd take us for movement classes. And I guess he taught us maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And then there were about 4 or 5 other teachers who taught us as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was still an extraordinary figure to learn from, even at that stage of the game. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, it's so fulfilling to hear from somebody who actually works with, the person, the one that we read about, the one that everyone says, okay, have you done Lecoq training? Have you done this? Have you done that? What was your experience of it? And for you to have actually said, I learned this from the man himself, and it's fascinating to hear. I did some sort of, just in preparation for today, I read something. There's a fantastic article in The Guardian, which you can get online, which was written by the great Martin Esslin, who I don't think is with us anymore, sadly. But he did this brilliant piece on basically Lecoq and what he was all about. And he described him, or somebody described him as he had an infinite variety of wit, humor, and intelligence. So given what you've just told me about that, he said about his kind of cutthroat approach to the room, did he have those moments where, even though he was very, very strict with the work, but did he obviously have those moments where he would get everyone in the room and say, okay, look, you're on the right lines here, I believe in you. Just like he did have that supportive element to him as well.
No, I wouldn't say you'd ever hear the words "I believe in you" come out of Lecoq's mouth. No, I don't think so. What he was really interested in is this truthful? That would be what he was interested in. Is this truthful? Does this represent the truth of whatever it is that you're trying to get across? And if you found that truth, you got his support and his kind of like, or his, you found it. But he wasn't interested in soothing us or smoothing us in any way. That he wasn't that type of teacher. What he was interested in was the work and the work. He didn't, I guess it wasn't the kind of school that had any kind of room for the individual sensitivities of the actor. It was all about, can you do the work, and how far are you going to go to do the work? How brave are you within the work? Is this funny? Is this not funny? Why is this not funny? How come it works one week and it doesn't work the next? Um, the analysis of what you were doing was important, but soothing or kind of supporting the person, no. Supporting the work, yes.
Mm.
I would say that's what he was interested in.
Okay, so I sort of my perspective on that, he seems to devise his work in sort of three categories in a way. There's many categories to his work. There's so many different, different movements, different ways you can go about it. But he seems to be fascinated by movement, masks, and space in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
And so in terms of his movement, exactly, I suppose, having been at GSA, been doing Shakespeare, and then, you're getting something written down, or when you get a play, something's there ready to go. But with movement, you are in the room, you're looking at a blank canvas, you're looking at you've given a stimulus, and now you've got to set it to movement in a way. So what message, or where exactly do you think Lecoq is coming from in terms of his movement practice in a way? Why does he want his actors to be, what fascinated him about movement? Why did he want his actors to be physical and actually express the story in a completely different way, as opposed to basically a play, something that's already been pre-written, do you think?
Yeah, I suppose where I think the work what he was interested in was, so firstly, space.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the other great things about Lecoq that he was also fascinated by was architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And the movement of bodies in space is a kind of architecture where you're making things change in the space in front of you. And I guess that the kind of space that you create is what helps you tell the story. And for Lecoq, everything moves. So the reason why movement is important, because nothing in life, unless it is without life, is still. So even in stillness, there's something moving. There's sap rising up the plant. There's blood pumping around our bodies. There's something is always moving, and therefore that is life. So I don't think Lecoq would ever be interested in movement that wasn't instigated for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's always about what is the justifiable movement to happen that tells the story. So that's why the neutral mask is so kind of key to Lecoq's teaching, and why it comes so early on, because it shows us what movement is necessary. When is there too much movement to tell the story that you want to tell? How much movement do you need to tell a story? And even if it's a really simple story, so for example, one of the very basic Lecoq exercises is waking up for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often, one of the things that I would definitely have done, and students, always do, is like, you wake up, you yawn, you stretch, and that would be like, that's not the story of waking up for the first time. That's the story of watching somebody stretch. But that's not waking up, because what's important about waking up for the first time is waking up and suddenly there you are in a completely new space. So immediately the space is the thing that becomes the most important thing for the actor to see and be aware of and open up to the audience. And it's the recognition of the space and how you see it that starts telling us it's the first time. So it's what movement is necessary to tell us the story. If it becomes necessary to tell us that the person waking up for the first time is incredibly tired, then maybe there's something about the movement that it becomes interesting at that point. But I guess his as you say, he was interested in physiotherapy. He became fascinated. He was completely fascinated by the movement of sports people. So a lot of the movements that you undertake analysis of at the school are all movements to do with kind of throwing the discus, skating, swimming, what moves when to make that action happen. And it's not that you necessarily will ever find yourself miming those things, but it's an understanding of how the articulation of that movement could perhaps lend itself to some other exploration that you end up doing at some point.
Mm.
But all those kind of movements, they've all got a very definite kind of pattern to them which makes them happen, and that is an action that is very defined. But then when you link action to emotion or to telling a story, what happens to it? How does the movement change? How does its rhythm change?
Mm.
It's not structured. It has this whole different rhythm going on.
Mm.
So I think it's space, rhythm, and what exactly you need movement wise to tell a story.
Yeah.
From the smallest thing to then when does it need to become big and expansive and all those kind of things.
Mm. That's really interesting because, you know, somehow when you go into Lecoq, you see that even the smallest things, even them have life in a way. And would it be fair to say that a Lecoq exercise was if you're pretending to be a curtain in the corner, and I know it's not a living thing, but
Yeah.
you've got the breeze coming through the window, and however how soft or as or as quickly as possible, and then just that little movement of a curtain going, just getting that bit of air just blown on it and stuff like that, and you find yourself gently moving
Mm-hmm.
through the room like that. Would that be something that Lecoq would encourage? Just that, or is that?
Well, I guess what you might be thinking of is, so part of the training is to explore the movement of things that are in the natural world that then somehow might be related to things within our human story.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you start off looking at the elements, which very clearly relate to emotional states. And then you also look at language, at paintings, at things, and then you start looking at materials. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, you might look at a curtain hanging, and if you were to open a window, how that would change the movement of the material. And I think for an audience, then, if you were to take away the idea that you were watching somebody being a curtain, and instead they were looking at somebody who is standing, if you took it down to something very minimal, standing at a station waiting, and you didn't know what was going on, and you just saw these small little movements happening, you might start to think somebody was in an emotional state.
Mm.
You might start to read something else into that. So the movement in itself, the exactness with which you can follow a movement might lead on to a discovery of something which is about a whole different kind of story. So another exercise that is really interesting is that we looked at the crumpling of paper. And Lecoq liked this exercise because actually it is essentially, when you crumple paper, initially it starts to, if it's newspaper and you don't do it too hard, if you do it really hard, it will never move again. But if you crumple it up and you don't do it too hard, it starts to try and open up again.
Yeah.
And he talked about this because essentially that movement is in itself just so tragic. Because what the paper's trying to do is to get back to its original, state, but it can't. And what's more, if the more you watch it, the more it kind of, you can start seeing the smallest of movements as the initial rhythm runs out. It doesn't stop. But you find that there's these other little bits that start to kind of carry on. And so the story of the paper is actually a very specific and longer one than you think it might be, were you to just kind of like say, well, I know what happens with paper. You roll it up and it goes back and then it kind of stops after 5 minutes. But actually, it's more detailed than that.
Mm.
And often, because it's tragic, you could take that movement and you could apply it to a scene and say, now I want you to explore what would it be if you were to play this scene out, but you were to play it and bring in that movement of the paper, so that when the initial news takes you, you get scrumpled up, and as you're playing out the grief of it, you allow yourself to unscrumple, but you have to do it in the same amount of time that paper took to unscrumple, and say that was 10 minutes. And actually an actor might choose to do that in 2. But if you do it over 10 and you're trying to find those moments when there's another bit, you might discover something else about how you let something go.
Hmm. That's that's lovely. That reminds me of Metamorphosis, and
Mhm.
Kafka play. I was lucky enough to
Yeah,
see that at the Lyric a few years. Oh God, we're going back to probably 2013, so nearly 10 years ago now. Uh,
yeah. Was it an Icelandic
it was,
actor?
yeah,
Yeah,
it was at the Lyric Hammersmith.
yeah,
Yeah,
I remember.
yeah. That for anyone who doesn't know that story of Kafka Metamorphosis, it's about a man who essentially is turned into a bug and is rejected by his family. And but the actor playing the bug, or he didn't actually dress up as it. It was just a man, but his movement, he was creating that image of a bug
Mm.
through movement. And the guy who did it, I can't remember his name, but he did such a great job. And
Yeah.
he didn't say a word throughout that whole, well, a word or very little throughout that whole production. And
Mm.
it was that subtle movement of like a beetle like walking across the floor, or them sort of finding a way through and stuff like that. And
Mm.
you could see, because he was quite a slim guy as well, you could see like the body and the muscles moving through the body and the bones on
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
display and everything. And I suppose if Lecoq saw that, he would be thinking it'd be a very rare moment in time where he'll go, okay, that's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, he really loved it when he found something that tickled him,
yeah,
and particularly if there were clowns, really naughty clowns, or there are inevitably there are people who just have funny bones, and with a clown nose on, and there's just got an inner stupidity which is just delightful. And when something tickled him, that was just brilliant because he would really laugh and laugh. That was delightful. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. He would have appreciated that, absolutely. But I think yeah, it's a kind of the key. I think the key to Lecoq's work is kind of like it's about. I think it's a bit like the links with Stanislavski are not so different, I think, because Stanislavski is all about kind of observation, isn't it, and replaying things out.
yeah.
And Lecoq was also about observing things, and sometimes it was trying to, with the limitations that you had physically, how can you recreate that within your own form, and what might this show us about what does an elastic band being stretched to the point where it breaks show us about the situation of somebody who's leaving a family for the first time and can't quite say goodbye and then eventually does.
Mm.
How can we find things in the movement of things that have nothing to do with them, which might give us a different kind of way of approaching a state, a scene that has a high emotional kind of content to it, and not rely on emotion to
Mm.
play out that scene, but
Yeah,
rely on something else to help us find it.
yeah. Did you ever see Frankenstein at the National Theatre
I saw it online when they put
online?
it online.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that first 15 minutes for
yeah,
for Benedict Cumberbatch and John Lee Miller, whoever was playing the creature that night, that's
yeah.
Lecoq defined, isn't it? I mean that.
It's a really, I mean, it's a really incredible movement, kind of growth of something, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. That's beautiful. I mean, I I guess I'd hate to pigeon it as Lecoq, but it's definitely with movement at its core.
yeah,
And I think he would really appreciate that.
yeah. Would he have
Yeah.
laughed at that, or would he have just gone, okay?
I think he would have really found that production fascinating completely. Yeah, absolutely. Um, he, I mean, this is just my impression of him, of course, because I don't
Yeah, yeah.
actually, what's going on in his head. But
Room with him though. You would.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think one thing he probably would really be interested in is that he's, or kind of, I think maybe balk against, because he used to really, it drove him mad when he thought of himself being thought of as a mime expert.
Mhm.
We did do mime, we did loads of mime, but he wasn't interested in mime that was kind of solidified within a very exact form. He always, and I think that's why the school still continues today, he always wanted his work to grow and move on, that it should never stay in one box, but that it should always grow. And theatre was changing, and it was always changing.
Mhm.
um And I think the thought that he might be considered as a mime, a sort of pure mime person, would, I think, not be great to him. But as somebody who used a form and then, and it was it was something that enabled people to discover more and more and more.
Yeah, that's a lovely sort of segue into. He talks about. Well, I think people. I'm not sure if this is an academic's telling of his work or his himself, but
Mm.
there's a couple of phrases which sort of jump out, which is the journey and gardening. It's the journey of a performer's, introduction, absorption, grasping, and ultimately flourishing in
Mm.
movement-based theatre. And then,
Mm.
but you've also got the gardening synonym, which is about you could try something, but it doesn't work. But the thing is, you're just planting seeds as you do in the garden.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess there is it. I'm quite fascinated to know about his approach to to failure in a way, and if we're using a phrase like gardening and also the journey as well,
Mm.
when you go into a theatre room, when you go into the rehearsal room and you're trying things, obviously we're going to make mistakes, we're going to
Mm.
fall on our ass, we're going to look pretty stupid at sometimes, but that's all
Mm.
about the growth. And Lecoq's approach to that, obviously, he was very about the work and stuff like that, but if
Mm.
something didn't work, if you did fall completely on your face about this sort of thing,
Mm.
would he be, would he accept that? Would he be glad that you're making mistakes, or would he be very
Oh
like,
yeah.
would he be like, you made a mistake, sit down, start again, that sort of thing?
Well, I think, yeah, if it wasn't working, it wasn't working. So get off the stage, definitely.
Mhm.
But then there's the failures which also lead to great discovery. So, and I think sometimes that's where, so specifically, I would say in clown, the one of the crucial periods of the school is when you start clowning,
Mhm.
and really the clown is about failure. It's about finding that possibility, because one of the first exercises is just to come in and make them laugh. I mean, Jesus, that's hard. So and
Yeah.
you could, and it's awful. You can imagine a whole
Yeah.
bank of people, all of your peers,
Oh,
and
oh no.
somebody with their arms crossed in front of you, and you're just trying anything to make them laugh, and they're stony faced and you can't go. So you're there and you become more and more desperate, and then eventually your desperation might just lead to you doing something, or nothing, which then leads us into a completely different kind of clown, the tragic clown,
Yeah.
who is there at their most vulnerable in front of the audience, um, hopeful and desperate, and there might be the start of something that is then the kind of funny. It might be a completely different sort of funny,
Mm.
um, but the kind of the flop, the we called it the flop, le trou. It kind of is the bead. That's what he called it. It. You have to kind of make friends with failure as a clown,
Mm.
because it is so difficult to find your funny. And some people have it immediately,
Mm.
like they can just come in, and we had an amazing Norwegian actress who had this unknown streak of complete, like, ah! So she sort of created things that were used to chop things up all around her, and it was just so surprising coming out of her that it was immediately always funny. I don't know why. And other people who, um, they just could react. They could just react to the smallest thing, and their relationship with the audience was so strong that the audience would be just lost,
Mm.
or they had a particular sort of charm,
Mm.
just smiling at the audience, and they won them round through smiling. It was just remarkable to see where people found their ability to overcome fear
Mm.
and vulnerability, and then connect with an audience.
Cool. So, Tell me a bit more about about mask work. Because
Mm.
there's um there's the neutral mask, and then he would wear masks. I think there's a phrase been thrown around like the anti-mask or something like that.
Or the counter mask?
Counter mask or anti-mask? I'm not
I
sure
don't know
which.
what anti-mask is.
But well, anti-mask is when you actually have a physical mask on with a specific expression. I can see one in your corner actually, in your top.
Oh, this a character mask. I would call that a character
It
mask.
might be a character mask, yeah, because
Yeah.
there's a difference between neutral mask
Yeah,
and character mask,
definitely.
isn't it? Okay, that's probably where I'm getting at.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Which one would you say was like a more, well, first of all, there are some obvious differences between the two. Being a neutral mask, you use your actual face, and you use your body for, well, your physical face, and
Mm.
then the other one is you actually have a mask on. You have a mask with a specific expression, and then your body language just has to not necessarily fit it to that extent, but whatever movement your body does
Mm.
is reflective of the emotion that you have, that you're wearing on your face, and then you're kind of, in a way, I wouldn't say trapped, but your movements are kind of,
Well, you become the character of that
yeah,
mask.
you
Yeah,
become a
yeah,
character, yeah, and everything
yeah.
that you do is centered around what you're wearing on your face, whereas with your neutral mask, your actual face with no covering on it whatsoever.
Well, in
Yeah,
Lecoq, we have masks. We have neutral masks, and we have them at school as well.
I do.
Oh yeah, we have neutral masks. So we have actual masks that you wear on your face. So the neutral mask. Some
Oh,
people might say, "I want you to wear your neutral mask," as in
your face.
neutralize your expressions. But actually, the neutral mask at Lecoq is a very I don't know if you've seen pictures of it. I wonder if I've got pictures somewhere. But anyway, it's a very kind of I would say almost Grecian face. So it has a little mouth. They're quite beautiful. You see a lot of eye in the neutral mask,
Mm-hmm.
but the rest of your features, of course, are covered. And what this gives is a complete focus on your body and your look. So the expression that's coming out of your eyes. The neutral mask is completely about
Mm-hmm.
this idea of economy of movement. So you start very clearly in a neutral mask seeing the physicality that somebody brings into the space with them. You see what kind of habits they have physically. You see whether somebody, when they're walking into a space, sort of has an unconscious habit of kind of rubbing their fingers together. Everything, because of this being on your face, starts to draw focus down to the movements that are in everywhere else in the body.
Yeah.
So what Lecoq did with a kind of, you have a 3-week period of focusing on this neutral mask, was about kind of finding an economy of movement, a way that the student can start to engage with space and opening space up to people and the audience and exploring space for themselves, exploring gesture and knowing kind of what gesture is appropriate to any given situation. Like when does it feel like it's too domestic? Is this the right kind of gesture to signify that you're saying goodbye to somebody for the last time? Like, how much movement do you need in order to get this story across? So the neutral mask has a fixed expression, but it's not a character. And anything that you're doing physically that starts to suggest character, we want to try and get that gone. So in Lecoq's neutral mask, it's about exploring how you, as a I suppose it's the most essential. It's not a robot. The neutral mask is one of the kind of like things when you start to teach Lecoq, which after a while people are going, but I don't understand, how can you not show emotion, blah 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 blah, how can this not be a character? And actually it's just about what do you do with movement that shows us the state of being of somebody without them emoting or trying to show an emotion, but you're just doing movement, and what does that tell the audience? Whereas the character mask, so this one here, that is exactly as you say. It might have an expression on it. So this one is very happy, but can look forlorn, depending on what I do with my body in it.
Mhm.
So the character mask is all about exploring, how you can show a character through your movements, and how rhythm and how gesture can change that expression from looking like it's never going to change from being happy to being something else.
Mm.
And where you place the mask, how far down it goes, how far up it goes, whether it turns on the side, what kind of rhythm you're playing those gestures in, how that changes how we view a character.
Mm. So I think a good example of neutral mask would be sort of ballet dancers in a way. Would that be a good one, or is that, or am I
No, I
complete?
don't think so, because they're trying to express changing emotions through their body, but it's a kind of their their head is also part of that.
Yeah.
um I'm trying to think. Neutral mask, I don't know what we can relate it to really. um
Um.
it's a real simplicity. There's a real simplicity to it.
Yeah.
It kind of is much more simple actually than sometimes it appears to be.
Yeah. I feel really silly now. I probably spent a lot of that time thinking the neutral mask is actually your face. No, it's actually a mask. Like,
Yeah, at Lecoq it is a mask,
oh,
and I think perhaps teachers might use it in some other way, but don't know, because if you haven't come across it, and of course this year we haven't been able to use any neutral masks because people haven't been able to share them. So any work that people have done about being neutral
mhm.
or using economy of movement, because the mask in itself is not in a state of always neutrality, they wouldn't have used masks. So I can understand why you might think that they're not a thing, but yeah, Lecoq, they definitely are. They're a fundamental teaching tool.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the character mask, I think
Mm.
again, I'm throwing this out there. I'm not sure if this is going to be the right one,
Go
but
on.
so I think quite a famous example of something like that would be the film with the film The Mask with Jim Carrey. Would that be kind of?
Oh, now you see, I haven't seen
Getting that
that, so
wrong.
I don't know.
You don't know.
I The only way I could do it is, I don't know, I can't think of any films which use them, but so I have to just think about mask companies like Vamos.
Yeah.
um Trestle are really famous. They used to do only mask work, and that's changed now. But
Yeah.
I mean, when you see masks being used really well, and you see that you can create an entire piece with no words at all, and yet the story is utterly clear just through the space that is held between people, the rhythm that they use to interact with each other, what they're doing rather than what they're saying, then you understand that this is a beautiful kind of way of creating theatre.
Yeah, there's something quite spiritual about it as well with the character mask. We actually have a fixed expression on your face the whole time. We play with this idea of, in life, or in sort of particularly in 21st century, in this world of social media and stuff like
Mm,
that, we kind of draw, people say they draw masks on their face, or they draw a smile on their face, when
mhm.
in fact underneath it's there's nothing to suggest, nothing worth smiling about at all.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
and there's something really quite nice about the you can put that on stage, you can put that fixed expression on stage and say, look, I look happy, I'm
Mm,
happy, I'm happy, but your body could be not so, your body could be stagnant, or it could be making very minimal kind of movements.
yeah,
And just the little, like, small steps, or like small steps across the room, or that very
yeah,
slow kind of drop of the shoulder and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But yet you've got that look on your face, and
Mm,
it's like I can see you want this to look like you're happy.
mm,
Your body is saying completely the opposite. And
yeah.
there's that contradiction that Lecoq, was he fascinated by that contradiction between how one could look a certain way and yet can sort of suggest.
I wouldn't say he was fascinated by the contradiction. What he was fascinated by was people and life. And that is people and life, isn't it? That we present one thing and yet we might be feeling another. And a way that we can explore that is through mask. So I think it's less the tools, but more the essential stories that he's fascinated by, and then the way of telling the stories is the thing that starts to become really interesting. What is the way of telling this story? What is the new way of telling this story? Can we tell this story in a in a different sort of way? Can we tell it without words? Can we tell it with masks? Can we, you know? So I think it's the essence of life that fascinated him, and then the way of expressing the stories that happened in life and
Mm.
what might be the best form of telling that story.
Yeah, it's a very visceral way of you're putting life on stage in its most visceral and, I suppose, or most authentic way. Would that be the right way of going or saying that?
Yeah, yeah, because I think that's the other thing is the kind of, so the truth of any situation, comedy is funny because it's based on truth. We understand in clowning, in comedy, that there is an essential truth that is either escaping the main protagonist, or that they're so aware of it and they're trying to create all these things around it. So I think authentic is, yeah, a good word for what lies at the root of of his way of approaching theatre, but you know, it might be in different forms.
Mm. That's interesting because was he ever something that I've sort of came across today for today as well is that a couple of people have written about he didn't really have a specific method as such.
Mm-hmm.
He was more of an instruction manual on how to, on things on how to conduct yourself, or how to explore movement in a way. So there's not like a set method, like a Stanislavski way of acting, like emotion memory and stuff like that. With Lecoq, there's no like definitive way of doing it. As you said, he wants his work to move on and move on and move on and move on. So there seems to be kind of like a lineage, yeah, a continuation to his work in a way, is that there's always new levels that you can go to, and like, yeah, well, whilst we've done this before, yet this leads us on to X, Y, and Z. There's always seems to be a way that's always going to keep growing.
Yeah.
There's always new places you can go to, so there's no never-ending answer in his work. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say on in the companies that have been through the school, I would say that's the way that the work has grown through
Yeah.
them. I'd say at the school that of course there is a really clear foundation of and structure to the teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that is, and I don't. It's interesting because some people who've been at GSA have, who were students of mine, have now gone on to train at Lecoq, and I would say that the fundamental structure of the training is pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be certain exercises have moved on, but there are core things like the neutral mask is core, improvisation is core, um, le jeu is core, melodrama is core, commedia is core. So all these things that I studied, students now will be studying. There might be some exercises, but so the fundamental teaching, I think, is the structure. But where he saw theatre going, I think, is limitless, and how you use what you learned in the training, how you take that on into your own work, is limitless.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it isn't. I guess it's not like a play, that you're going to Stanislavski,
Yeah.
your way through. It would be a different way of approaching it, definitely.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. I mean, thank you for correcting my thinking today. This has been,
No, not at all.
you can tell it's not really been my forte, so I probably look a bit silly now.
No,
But
you don't at all. And also, I mean, I don't read academic books about Lecoq, so I don't know anything that people have written about him. I have the books that he wrote, and I have my notes and my memories. So I'm talking about it really from my experience.
mm,
So that there could be academic books where people have gone and interviewed him and interviewed hundreds of people who've been through the school and might have a completely different take on it. So I'm really only talking from my experience, Ollie. So don't apologise in any way.
no, 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 okay, that's good to hear. Thank you for that. But actually, let's sort of talk about your experience of this. When you're actually when you're training, or when you're
Mm,
watching people train with the Lecoq method, or
mm.
the just doing these exercises,
Yeah.
your personal experience of being in a show or being in the
Mm,
rehearsal room, of actually being in the moment and just doing
mm.
the movement with obviously with the man in the room and everybody else watching, what goes on through your head, like what
Terror. panic,
Panic.
fear.
Okay. Apart from that,
Yeah.
when you get past that initial barrier of okay, I'm performing, I don't know if this is working,
Yeah.
but but when you get past that and you actually onto something and you've found a routine that's got this his seal of approval, and then you start to go deeper with it, and then you start to see the story that you're creating,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all through movement. Like, what's that sensation for you like?
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, he does bring in words as well. Of course, we speak in the training, so it's. I think movement is a starting point, and then the words come.
Then the words come, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think when once you've found something that is kind of truthful, um, like one time I can remember getting a big yes, which is like, oh hooray, was we'd created in our little company, we created a kind of thing based on the elements. So each of us had taken an element for a character,
Mhm.
and we had to create a scenario where the elements somehow shifted, and we chose a dentist to be this. And I don't know, we just found sort of the things that happen in a dentist waiting room, and the characters were kind of they seemed justified by the element, and their changes were justified by the elements. So it worked because we'd everything was truthful and justified, and it was the basis of the character, and the scene worked, and that was great because it kind of went, okay, I understand this.
Yeah.
I see why it works. I can see we haven't forced anything to happen, but it's come intrinsically from the characters and the elements and the way that they react upon each other. And we weren't trying to be funny.
Mm.
It was just the truth of the characters interacting as the elements did. And I think because we weren't pushing it and we weren't trying to be funny, it all worked as and it worked well. So I think it's kind of, it's that thing, isn't it, when you just are truthful with whatever you're working with, and you're not trying to second guess what the outcome will be, and you're just building up the scene, and you're allowing the characters to have the interaction, and you're playing, and the play enables you to find those interactions. When all that happens, then that's probably the best fertile ground.
Mm.
When you don't have anybody who's telling you what to do, but you're playing to find out what the next step is. I think that probably was one of those moments where you go, oh, okay, it's play, it's playing, it's allowing the truth about these elements, about these characters to happen. That's what's enabling this to get to a place where it's reasonable.
Yeah, and I think that's. I was going to ask you today actually, what do you think that movement can do, which words can't in a way? And I think you've sort of kind of answered that already. But
Well, yeah, interesting. And also, I would say, to come into that question, I would bring stillness in as well.
as well.
Yeah, I think often there's a real desire to do stuff, and sometimes what can be really powerful is stillness, smallness, stillness, simplicity.
Mm.
So I think what movement can do is enable you to, so if you link into the elements, or into, it might be Laban for other people, it can be a way into a character's sort of basic motor of being. So if I were to link a character to fire, I might understand that I have a kind of high energy that's going on all the time, and that can give me a really quick and easy way into a character and the way that they behave, their behavior driven by this internal motor. So movement can be used as a kind of really quick way for an actor to access character. If you are in an emotional scene and you just cannot find tears and there's no bright lights to look into, if you were to get into that kind of moment of really high functioning fire and to have the breath of fire, that might help you find that emotional state which you cannot conjure up from anything else. So in finding kind of motors of movement, it can be a key or an access into a character. And then I think the other thing that movement might bring you is, I mean, for example, with the Claude Ensemble, I was part of a piece called The Red Ladies, which was a theatre piece and also a massive kind of town exercise. So I don't know, there were maybe 13 to 15 of us in the company, and we would sometimes just go to a town and we'd all be dressed in red headscarves and black glasses, black raincoats, red suitcases, black tights and red stilettos, and we would have kind of movement around the town, so structured kind of passageways of where we were going, and so that people and passers-by and pedestrians would see these different kind of passages of a very striking kind of visual image of women just kind of moving around this space that would then perhaps coalesce to one space where we do a bit of synchronized movement of some kind. And then you've got something kind of quite visual, like an army, like a female army, like you know, you can start pulling out all sorts of different images from that. And then in the theatre piece we would do all sorts of different things that would be really structured movement wise, or would be very simple domestic movement. Like at one point we all sat down and knitted, then we ran furiously for a stage of it, and then we had really choreographed movement where we were kind of passing each other and knew exactly what we were doing at any stage. So it's like an intricate kind of pattern of something. So you know, it becomes something then that's more like ballet, more like dance, where you're kind of getting your meaning from movement. Yeah, so I don't know, I think if you really delve into it, it becomes a really powerful tool for telling stories. Sometimes words don't express something that gesture can express, you know, when words can't come and somebody's in real pain, but you move over to them and you put your hand on their shoulder, and that's enough to tell us everything we need to know. So yeah, God, that was a long answer, wasn't it?
No, it's really good. That's fascinating. No, talk. It's great. Doing everything. And I think just one final thing I'll just say today actually is there seems to be a common theme about the whole thing, that even though it is tough discovery, but I think did he also encourage you guys just to have fun and just to let go of
Play.
just
Yeah.
play, just don't worry about trying to get it right, just play, and whatever happens. If it's not good, we'll just put it away, and if it's good, we keep it in, and of course I think that is the principle of just, you're saying earlier of just getting up, and there's this terror and there's this
Yeah.
but it's hard finding the fun in vulnerability. It's tricky, it is hard, and it's something that we'll probably continue to learn for a very long. Some people just don't suffer from it at all, but I think most of us find that way. I certainly do.
Yeah.
But it's something I'm definitely working on. Would he want just like you and your peers and everyone just to say, look, let's just have fun, just go in there and just play and just have fun, and whatever happens to be.
Yeah, I think I would say possibly not have fun exactly, but I think what was key to his to his teaching was the fact that there is always play. Always play in something. What is the play of this situation? If you're clowning and you're playing with somebody else, their ideas can inform your ideas, and if you're alive to that and receptive in the moment, if you don't say no, I'm not doing that, then the play of that will lead to something. And playing with ideas, playing with objects, playing with whatever you've got to kind of find something which is a satisfying image, or an image you haven't seen before, or oh my god, that's so clever, that when that towel became a bath and then became the rain and then became the sea, if you're so the more you play with something, the more discoveries you're going to make. And I think I don't think he'd say have fun, I think he'd say use play to discover, explore, find something new, but find the truth of this situation, and keep finding ways to make the story alive and fresh.
Yeah, and yeah, that's so interesting to hear. I always wonder if there's a way of like a saying or like a mantra from him, in a way, just to think that if you you know, if you don't get it right, and of course you think to yourself, oh God, you know, I just did something that like a complete arse, you know. uh you know, well, I mean, but maybe not him, because he was very kind of, as you say, very abrupt and quite straight to the point, really. But you know, for anyone listening or watching, you know, and you know who's doing this, who wants to get into this, you know, if you get up there and you make a complete fool of yourself and you do something that's completely not right, you know, we often have the tendency to go away and think, oh no, God, what am I doing? I'm on completely the wrong page here. What's how do I get this right? You know, what would you say to people? Just like, not that it doesn't matter, but like, you know, we all try things, we all do things, we all
Oh,
do things.
sorry, I don't know what that is. Something's ringing. I don't know what
Something's
it is.
ringing.
Uh, uh, oh, it's my son. I'll tell you why. He probably wants to be picked up from his job early.
Okay.
But I'll message him and answer him in a minute.
That's fine.
I think what he'd say is, to Bouge, everything moves. So in that way, that the thing to do is not to dwell on what you've done wrong,
Yeah.
but to kind of get up and work out what the story needs, even if it's a kind of the scene of a story that is your own individual thing. What is it you're trying to say? What is it you're trying to make? What is it you want the audience to know? What can you do to try and tell that story better? But in the way of Two Bouge, like, nothing stays in the same place. So if you feel down now, your wave will rise again, but only if you keep playing, even if you only if you keep going, because nothing can stay in the same place. So even if you feel you've failed, that will move, that's gone, that's past. Yeah.
That's lovely. And I think that is a lovely place to finish today. I think, yeah, that's great. Yeah, and of course you've got to go pick up your son now, because
I have to pick up my son at 3 o'clock. I do.
actually it's very good timing. So it's called
Perfect timing.
That's fantastic. So yeah, cool. That is a lovely place to end. So thank you guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. This has been the Uncensored Critic, and I'll be back soon. And Sabs, thank you so much for your time. This has been so interesting to hear, and thank you for correcting me and for educating me today.
Well, I mean, we say correcting, but as I say, this is from my experience, my understanding, and there will be very erudite books which could well contradict everything I've said. But from this is my understanding of everything as far as I've got with it.
Yeah.
But it's been a pleasure, and I will see you, even if I don't see you in the room, I will see you in the space of GSA in the autumn.
We shall. I look forward to it.
Great.
Hey, thank you so much. If you just hang on, I'll end the meeting now. Then I'll just say goodbye to you once.
Cool.
So thank you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Sabs, thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Yeah. Bye.